Hey everybody, welcome back. We have another special guest tonight. We have Doris Lin from New Jersey. Doris is very active politically, and tonight we're going to discuss three different areas that she's involved with. We're going to discuss the Bernie Sanders campaign and Bernie Sanders dropping out, and then we're going to discuss her being involved with the Progressive Caucus, and then later we'll also talk about how she's involved with Animal Protection Services. But first, welcome, Doris.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm so sorry about Bernie. Where are you mentally right now about Bernie dropping out?
I'm still heartbroken. I'm still disappointed. Not that I wanted him to, stick it out longer. I'm just like sad that we're in this place. I think eventually, the vast majority of Bernie supporters will end up supporting Biden. But I'm not ready to cheer Biden on yet. I'm just still kind of processing and grieving.
Right. Doris, do you feel stunned? Did it seem like it came out of nowhere for you? Were you like shocked? Or were you like sort of like?
I don't think it came out of nowhere. I did see a headline a few days ago that said that some of Bernie's top advisors were telling him to drop out, and of course, lots of people were saying Bernie should drop out now. We shouldn't have primaries during the pandemic and stuff like that. So I was kind of emotionally somewhat prepared that might happen.
And during the campaign, how did you get involved, and what would you say your role was? It wasn't an official role; you were volunteering. How does that all come about?
So I started out in the fall donating money a couple times, a couple of small donations. And then in January, it was funny, my friend Catherine, who's very involved with the Bernie campaign, more involved than I've been, calls me up and she's like, hey, we should have a Bernie phone bank. And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. She's like, we should do it in your town, in Freehold. And I was like, okay. And then she encouraged me to organize it. There was a map of Bernie events on the Bernie website, so she talked me through that, setting it up on the Bernie map and creating a Facebook event. And we found another friend who was willing to host it at her house, and she had been having Bernie phone banks at her house like all throughout the fall, but it wasn't like a regular thing. It was just whenever she felt like it. So we made it a weekly event every Saturday at her house. And every week I would, create a new Facebook event, create a map, an event on the Bernie map. And so we had a good regular group coming every Saturday to do phone banking.
So pre-pandemic, you're feeling pretty good. You're like,
yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. Yeah, we were doing great.
Now, as we approach Super Tuesday, you're still feeling good.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, this is new to you because you weren't that involved in 2016. So I was involved in 2016. I was down in South Jersey. I lived in Point Pleasant. You live in Freehold. We actually had to create our own office down there. We grassrooted our own office. But I would tell you that when I was involved with the movement and I made more and more friends like you, Doris, I made other friends, we all thought it was rigged. We're like, this is rigged, but it's important, and we're going to keep going. And then all of a sudden, boom, our moment was when WikiLeaks came out and said, yeah, this whole thing's rigged. And we're like, we knew it was rigged. Oh, no. But we're like, all right, we're going to keep going. But your moment was Super Tuesday, where you're watching all of a sudden all these moderate Dems dropping out.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Warren staying in to split the vote. And then, boom, he doesn't do well on Super Tuesday.
Yeah. And I'm sure you saw that cartoon that was going around Facebook, Weekend at Biden's, and it looks like the Weekend at Bernie's. I'm sorry. Oh yeah, Weekend at Bernie's. That's funny.
It's perfect. No, it's Weekend at Bernie's. They're propping up Joe Biden. They should have had Buttigieg.
Yes, it has Buttigieg and Klobuchar holding up Biden. Yes, yeah. So
how did that make you feel? Did you say, oh my God, I didn't realize that they would do that. I can't believe that they would orchestrate a takeover like that. I thought they would play fairly.
Yeah, well, I mean, is it fair? Are these backroom deals fair? I don't know. I don't even know what kind of deal they struck or if there was a deal, but obviously there's something going on behind the scenes.
Well, for us, we feel like Bernie's the best candidate. He's gonna do the most progressive work. He has the best record of everybody else, and all of a sudden they decide, no, we're gonna take the worst possible guy and prop him up. And you're like, wait, why would you ever do that? And it's because they don't want the last person they want to be president of the United States is Bernie Sanders. That's Democrats and Republicans. That's the last thing they want. So I apologize, Doris, because you did all that work, and I wish I had talked to you and said, Doris, be careful. Your heart's going to be broken because they're going to do something horrible to you. I don't know what it is. I can never predict what it's going to be. I'm always trying to predict, what horrible thing are they going to do to Bernie? And this time it was, and then I guess shortly after that, all of a sudden a pandemic comes into your life. And so does the mood change again? What happens now with you and your virtual phone banks and going to meet people? What happens then with the pandemic?
So we switched to virtual phone banks mid-March, and we had one volunteer create these Zoom meetings where we could still see each other and like type into a chat box as we were phone banking. So we all had ourselves muted, but you could see everyone, was on their phone doing the phone banking.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
While you're doing this, how many states do you think you've called into total for you? How many states do you think you called into yourself personally?
I don't know, 6, 7 different states. I'm not sure.
And in those 6, 7 states, what was you're almost doing polling, right? You're going in there, you're trying to, the mood is.
We're trying to identify supporters, yes.
So when you're going in there, how are you feeling state to state? Can you recall like, this is good, not good, this is bad? I mean.
It was funny because the first state we were calling was Iowa, because that's the first primary or the first caucus. And calling Iowa, there was so much support for Bernie. And it was looking so good. We were so hopeful. And then even like getting into New Hampshire and Nevada, still, a lot of Bernie support. And then it was only, I noticed a switch after Super Tuesday. All of a sudden, a lot of Biden supporters, before Super Tuesday, every once in a while, a Buttigieg, a Warren, a Klobuchar, whatever. But it was still majority Bernie. And then after Super Tuesday, it was like maybe half Bernie, half Biden. And I also did talk to Bernie supporters who felt like it didn't matter anymore. Like, I support Bernie, but I don't know if I should vote for him. What does it matter? He's not going to win.
So what you're saying is that Super Tuesday had a major impact psychologically on people. It actually works where they go, you know what? I guess I have to vote for Biden because Bernie can't win. And plus, me and you, we know that again, this is why we do what we do. The media is going to beat those people up. They're going to get beat up on Facebook. It's all of a sudden people are going to come out of the woodwork. I mean, even now, I don't know if you're aware, as we go full circle, all these Bernie groups on Facebook are being infiltrated with Biden people, shaming everybody again. We're going through this whole shaming thing. You're like, where are all these people coming from? Is this paid for? I mean, who's coming in? So again, it's bizarre. It's a bizarre, process to be in.
Wow.
So what were the Super Tuesday states that you did call into? So this is prior to Super Tuesday. Do you remember what states you called into prior to Super
Tuesday? I remember. It was such a blur, but maybe I should explain a little bit about phone banking also. The way it works is, the old-fashioned way was, you would have these sheets of paper with, lists of voters and phone numbers. You'd be sitting there with your phone, dialing each number. But the way it's done now, it's all online. And the Bernie dialer does all the dialing for you. So you call in, and you can use either your phone or your computer to do the calling. But you only call in once. And once you're logged into the system, you don't hang up. You either wait for the other person to hang up, or you hit this red button on your screen and it'll start calling the next person for you. It's that robocall thing where the person answers and says hello, and there's like a pause before you say hello because it's putting you in there. So it was easy to make a lot of calls, but I didn't know who I was calling. I mean, you see their name, their address and stuff, but I didn't always know which state I was calling.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Doris, because I did try to phone bank, and I did phone bank in 2015, 2016, and we talked about this on the phone. In 2015, I felt like the software was better for me. Maybe it just was too much anxiety to be on and having the next phone call go, the next phone call go. I couldn't get into the system. But in 2015, I told you when I called into New York City, they showed, so you're sitting there in front of a screen, you see the number of callers who are out there calling with you, and you see how many calls are being made, and you see the goal. And I told you that when people from the campaign kept calling me and saying, are you going to phone bank? And when I pushed back and I said, well, where are your numbers now? How are we doing phone banking wise? What are the numbers? He's like, oh, I don't have the numbers. And I was like, how do you not have the numbers? We had the numbers in 2015, 2016. He was like, oh, they don't give us the numbers. I'm like, well, how do you know what kind of progress you're making? How do you motivate people to be like, hey, we're a little bit behind in a certain state? He's like, oh, we're not doing that. I don't know the numbers. And I was like trying to control myself. I was like, okay, well, that doesn't seem like a very good system. So, and you didn't know really the number of calls that was being made state to state.
Yeah, I don't think it showed anywhere on the screen how many people were currently making calls or how many calls had been made. But, it was interesting, like almost once a week, I would get a call from a volunteer at the Bernie campaign saying, hey, Doris, can you phone bank this weekend? And I was like, yeah, I'm already planning to phone bank on Saturday. We have a weekly phone bank going. And then after that happened a few times, they were like, hey, Doris, can you phone bank like twice this week? So, I mean, they were constantly encouraging us to make calls. But you're right. It didn't say on the screen how many calls had been made or how many people are calling right now.
And on that topic, I would just say, now I know you're still hurting and you're still there. But if in a couple months from now, when you look back, and you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but when you look back, will you be saying, they should have done this a little bit differently? I wish they had done this a little bit more. Or is there something that you picked up that was like, because Doris, I know you graduated from MIT, so you're very smart. So I'm putting the pressure on you. What were the weaknesses that you felt maybe that the Bernie Sanders campaign wasn't picking up on?
Well, one thing I noticed when I was phone banking was a lot of people hang up as soon as there's that pause, as soon as they realize it's an auto dialer, because they know it's not, a personal call, right? It's political, it's junk, it's a scam or whatever. So I wish we could go back to the old-fashioned way of having a list of numbers and you call each one at a time. And even though you're making fewer calls, you're talking to more people because they're not going to hang up. They're not going to hear that pause from the auto dialer and just automatically hang up. So I wish we could go back to that. And also a new thing this year that I noticed, that I've done so much phone banking for political candidates over the years. But one thing I noticed this year was the bot. I don't know if you did any phone banking this year or got any bots. So there are lots of different kinds of bots out there that answer the phone, and some of them are innocuous. They'll say, if this is a real person, dial 28 or something like that. And if you're using an auto dialer, you can't do that. But there are also bots that will say like, hello, oh, hold on, oh wait, I can't hear you, can you repeat that? And they will put you through all this crap until you realize you're talking to a recording. They'll say, wait, I still can't hear you. Can you repeat that? Can you say that louder? And it was really frustrating. So I would get like one or two of those during every phone bank.
Yeah, I did some phone banking, and again, it just didn't work for me. Do you prefer phone banking over canvassing? Was that ever an idea that you guys would canvass at some point, or?
Since New Jersey's primary is so late, they weren't asking us. Yeah, they weren't asking us to phone bank. Although there were some people taking buses to New Hampshire to phone bank in New Hampshire, but I couldn't do that. I have kids, so. But there were people going up to New Hampshire for the weekend and stuff like that to phone bank.
So you are also a member of the Progressive. You're the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus in New Jersey.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of one issue that could be addressed right away is actually I don't know if you have the clout in your caucus to move the primary earlier, because that's a big issue, right? I don't know if that could happen. Can you make
That
that
would
happen?
be nice. Um, I don't know. I don't know if we can make that happen or if we can somehow influence it. I would love to move New Jersey's primary earlier, since we're a blue state and we're going to be more progressive than some of the others. Um, that would be nice. And I have to wonder if the reason we haven't moved earlier is because we're more progressive than, like the southern states. Maybe they're afraid of a progressive candidate, taking the lead early, and that's why our primary is so late.
You told me earlier in an earlier phone call that you actually felt, one of your topics that you wanted to talk about is that you actually felt that Bernie was going to win New Jersey, and that political insiders were not happy with that.
Yes.
Can you speak to that?
Okay. So the way New Jersey primaries work is in each county, the county Democratic Party will choose who gets the line. And the line is basically the endorsement of the county party. And it will be one line on the ballot that shows everyone who the county party is endorsing in the primary. And that choice is made. Well, technically, the county party chair can choose whoever they want, but they do want, the party members to have a say. So it's the county committee members, and there's one female and one male representative in each voting district. So I'm a female county committee member in my district, votes on who gets the line for your county. And then, so you would have like Bernie at the top of one line, Biden at the top of another line, and then the down ballot candidates bracket with whoever they want to bracket with. So in New Jersey, it would be like Biden, and then Cory Booker, and then, all the other down ballot candidates. And then on the Bernie line, you'd have all the progressive candidates. And this has been going on forever. And a lot of progressives have been saying that the line is unfair because it gives a huge advantage to whoever gets the line. People will just pick the candidate in that first column and just go down the line and vote for all those people. And it's chosen by party insiders, including myself. So when it was looking like, or when people were afraid that Bernie might get the line in New Jersey, that would mean all the progressive down ballot candidates would also be in that column with Bernie getting that advantage. And all of a sudden, Senator Menendez said, we should get rid of the line for the presidential candidate and only the presidential candidate. So that way, the down ballot candidates could not bracket with Bernie and could not get that advantage. So they were worried about, in New Jersey, the progressive Democratic challenger to Cory Booker is Larry Hamm. They did not want Larry Hamm to get that advantage over Cory Booker. So there was talk going into the county conventions that we should get rid of the line just for the presidential candidate, so that those down ballot candidates could not bracket with Bernie and could not get that advantage. I mean, they didn't say that was the reason, but they said, we shouldn't have a line for the presidential candidate.
Right. So when you get into the Progressive Caucus and you're the co-chair, are there rules and regulations that you have to read over and understand? Are they complex? Is it long? Is it a process that most people are just going to be like, I'm not going to read this crap. I am not going to read this.
Well, we do have bylaws, but no one has to read that. That's not important. The Progressive Caucus is an official caucus of the New Jersey Democratic State Committee. So we're not allowed actually to take a position in a primary. We're not allowed to endorse in a primary. And the state committee doesn't officially get involved in primaries. But after the primary, when someone is the nominee, then we can pick and choose which nominees we want to endorse. So for example, in 2016, we didn't endorse anyone for president because we didn't consider Hillary a progressive.
When you get into the Progressive Caucus, and you've been in there since, when did you get your co-chair title, Doris? When did you become?
I think 2016.
Oh, so that's a long time. So
Yeah.
what is, and again, before we did this interview, you told me that most people don't want to do the work. What is the work of co-chair of the Progressive Caucus? What work do you have to do?
Well, right now we're trying to organize some virtual events. We were going to have these forums on various progressive issues throughout the year. And because of the pandemic, we have to change them to virtual events. So we're still moving forward. We're still trying to get commitments from speakers. So it's remembering those deadlines, keeping on people saying, hey, did you hear back from so-and-so? You were going to contact this person or that person, or, and then before we were doing virtual events, when we had the in-person events, reserving a meeting room, that was always a lot of work, because a lot of times meeting rooms aren't free, or they're booked up, or they're not cheap, so that was always a lot of work. Yeah.
I have two questions for you. One is, and again, I think this is something you wanted to have time to think about, and I wanted to ask you specifically, this is going to be a two-part question, because I'm going to forget the other question, but so what are the progressive issues that your caucus is trying to push the hardest? And the second question would be, how do you go about organizing? I mean, you're not virtually phone banking people out. How are you reaching out? How are you growing the Progressive Party in New Jersey? What platforms are you using? How do you do that?
So this year in January, we decided we were going to have 3 forums on 3 issues we wanted to focus on. And those were the Green New Deal, Medicare for All, and in New Jersey, marijuana, because in November, we're going to have marijuana on the ballot in New Jersey. So we were hoping to have the forums on the Green New Deal and Medicare for All in the spring, and then we'll have the forum on marijuana in the fall. And we were hoping that our forums in the spring, would be during primary season, but New Jersey's primary is so late, and now Biden is the presumptive nominee. It doesn't really matter, but we're still moving forward with those.
So now you're in the middle of a pandemic. Has this shifted the way, I know you said you're doing the forums, but are you guys in discussion like, oh my God, we're in a pandemic, what platforms are we going to use? How are we going to grow this movement? How are we going to win? Particularly legalizing marijuana. I mean, that's another topic we can probably both go off on. I'm fairly familiar, and I'm sure you are, that legalization of marijuana was supposed to be done last year. That bill was written and tweaked over the course of maybe 1 or 2 years. That bill was set and ready to go. And for some, you probably know better than me, so you can speak, but I heard that bill was tweaked.
Oh, no, actually, it sounds like you know better than I do.
Well, what I had heard, that bill had been worked on for a while, and it was ready to go, and for some reason, they backed off, and maybe it's because they would prefer the public to say, instead of, so here, so when I went after I talked to you off interview, I was like, I want to study my local government, the assemblymen and the state senators. And the one issue that I was thinking I would take as, my issue was legalizing marijuana. And what I found out in our state of New York State, there are either assemblymen or state senators who are like, you know what, if I touch this, I'm not going to get reelected. So They just choose to vote against it because they don't want to get voted out of office. So I'm wondering if they put it on the ballot in November, because that takes the pressure off everybody in the state, right? It's a public issue. The public decides, like, hey, we didn't do it. It was the will of the people. So I guess it's a good, bad thing. Let's hope that, again, another sticking point with legalization of marijuana in New York is, where does the revenue go? And is the revenue going to help the minority areas that were damaged during these drug laws? Is there going to be, I don't know if you want to call them reparations or payback or whatever. Are they going to be given some sort of advantage?
I think the answer is clearly no.
Well, I mean, again, that's something you're going to have to fight for and tweak. But that was another sticking point with the New York legislation was they were like, no, you're not really giving the revenue streams to the right areas. Can't. So again, so you had some people were like, I'm going to lose an election if I vote yes for this. I can't touch this. It's a hot, it's a live wire.
Yeah.
And then you were over here with more progressives like, nope, this bill just doesn't do it. It doesn't take care of the people that needs to get taken care of, whether it be expunging records or getting prisoners out of jail, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not saying, but I'm saying it just wasn't progressive enough. So, it's going to be very interesting. I wasn't aware, I probably should have been aware, but I wasn't aware that legalizing marijuana is going to be on the ballot, which is really important, right? For Bernie to drop out also sort of takes away that heat, that getting those people to the polls. If Bernie was there in November, that bill is going to pass with flying colors, right? They're not going to be able to stop it. Now it's kind of like legalizing marijuana might be held back for another who knows how long. So that's really scary. Another, a huge impact of him not being able to win the primary and going against Trump, maybe legalization of marijuana and the continuation of the targeting of, minorities. And it's just a good idea. I'm a big believer in just, taxing the revenue streams, and just the medical use, obviously, and getting more people to experiment and to see, how they can use cannabis and et cetera to use it against some medical conditions. So that's the issue in New York City as far as legalizing marijuana. Do you notice any issues? Are you aware of possible issues in New York, or are you just focused on New Jersey?
I'm more focused on New Jersey.
So what were the other, legalization of marijuana was one of the platforms. I'm forgetting what the other ones that you were.
Green New Deal and Medicare for All.
Okay, so Green New Deal, Medicare for All.
And it's sad that now there's no longer a candidate in the race who supports Medicare for All.
So those are three strong ones that may be very difficult now to push. The Green New Deal might be very difficult to push, and Medicare for All with Bernie not being as active. And I know you're also involved with animal protection. If you could push something in the Progressive Caucus, something that you see as a major issue, maybe in New Jersey or across the country, what is your major, if there was one, if they could only say, hey, Doris, you can put one of your animal protection progressive issues onto the platform, what would be, for you, Doris, something that you'd really try to work on?
Probably one of the most contentious animal protection issues in New Jersey right now is the bear hunt, the black bear hunt. We have a population of black bears in the northwest corner of New Jersey, and if you talk to most New Jersey residents, their response is, we have bears in New Jersey, because they don't realize they're just in that northwest, well, they're not just in that northwest corner, but they're concentrated in that northwest corner, and they're starting to, kind of scatter down. But bears are a recovering species in New Jersey. They were hunted nearly to extinction in the 1960s, and for over 30 years, there was no bear hunting in New Jersey because they were almost extinct. And now they're a recovering population, and they're starting to be hunted again. And it's heartbreaking to a lot of people because, they're gentle giants and they're generally timid.
When you're fighting against the bear hunt, what organizations are you fighting against? Who is your target? What organizations, what people out there are supporting the bear hunt?
Oh, well, the hunters, the New Jersey Division of Fish and Wildlife, and the hunters have a lobbying organization that, we're also fighting. Plus they get that, NRA money, and, they're backed by all the weapons manufacturers and stuff, who love hunting. So it's also a problem because of the way that the Fish and Game Council is set up. In New Jersey, by statute, it's an 11-member council, and 6 of the 11 members must be hunters. Oh. So, yeah. So they have this built-in bias, this built-in advantage. And
nobody would know that, Doris, unless you just said that, though. The lay person is not going to know that council is the majority is hunters.
Right.
So how can you ever win that battle? I mean,
yeah. So one thing we have to do is change that statute. We have to change the composition of the council.
And how does that process work?
Well, you have to find a state legislator to introduce the bill, and then it's got to go through committee hearings. But one problem is we have a Senate President, Steve Sweeney, who is on the side of the hunters and the trappers. And as long as Sweeney has been Senate President, it's been several years now, he has not let a wildlife protection bill go through. So it's been very frustrating. And Governor Murphy, he's generally good on progressive issues, not every progressive issue, but he has not kept his promise to stop the bear hunt. That's been very disappointing to us. And
I know that one of my favorite, I don't know if he was a senator or Raymond Lesniak was also
he was a state senator.
State senator, yes. And very big on animal rights. And you told me that he is, even though he's retired, he still is involved, right? With
yeah. He retired from the legislature, but he formed the Lesniak Institute that works to, promote animal protection issues as well as, his other issues.
Well, I'm glad that you're protecting. How is adoption? Do you know how?
Hi, who's this?
Do you know how adoptions are going in New Jersey during the pandemic? Has there been an increase? Are you aware?
I don't think adoptions have increased, but a lot of shelters have asked people to take their animals as fosters so that you don't have to have employees going in every day, taking care of the animals and, risking going out and risking that contact with other volunteers or whatever. So a lot of the shelters are now empty or mostly empty because people have taken the animals home as fosters.
So you've been on the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus now for 4 years. Do you feel like there's something more for you, or is this where you want to stay? You would never run for office, or you would never, do you see a way of, do you brainstorm ideas like, okay, how do I grow this Progressive Caucus? What do I do? I mean, you were involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign. You sort of know the difficulty of getting momentum and getting people involved. On a day-to-day basis, is that even on your radar? Or are you just so involved with the politics of the co-chair, you don't have time to brainstorm, you're just doing your job?
We do, among the exec com, we do talk about things like strategy, how to grow the caucus and things like that. And one thing that's important for us is partnering with other progressive groups because, I don't consider myself an expert on every issue. And actually none of us do, but there are experts working on each issue, in these dedicated nonprofit groups. So we partner with groups like, like Food and Water Watch or South Jersey Women for Progressive Change or the Working Families Party. We've invited people to come speak at our meetings. We've had legislators come speak at our meetings. And we also want to promote their issues like Let's Drive New Jersey has been promoting driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants. That's such an important issue because we want to make sure that everyone driving is a safe driver, and it lets them, have jobs and be legal drivers. Because without a driver's license, New Jersey's mass transit is not that great, so it would allow them to drive legally. So we've been partnering with other groups, and I think that's how we strengthen them and they strengthen us.
Right. So tonight's Zoom call should make you more comfortable now to maybe start live streaming off your Progressive Caucus page, or maybe you can actually start having more meetings, more progressive meetings with all those groups that you just talked to, because you're basically doing what Bernie has said, right? You got to build a coalition, and we're all basically fighting for the same thing, and we all have to get on the same page. Do you see our path forward for MA4? Did I say it right? Do I have to repeat that? Did I say it right? And thanks. I knew I said it backwards. Do you see a path forward for M4A and the Green New Deal?
Well, you know what? Even though Bernie is not going to be our next president, I do think we are moving forward, and we have to keep moving forward. With a Republican Senate, it wasn't going to happen in 4 years, probably not even in 8 years, even if Bernie had become president. It's something that is a long-term goal. And, I had so many Democrats telling me, why are you supporting Bernie? There's no way he can get Medicare for all through, with a Republican Senate. And we have to elect people who support Medicare for all, even if we're not going to do it in 2 years or 4 years or however long their term is. Because when you elect more people, then the issue becomes more mainstream, and that's how you promote it. So I do see a path forward for Medicare for all, for the Green New Deal, and all of these progressive issues, because like Bernie says, not me, us. This campaign was never about one person or even one term. It's about a movement that keeps moving forward.
Doris, do you realize at the end of this phone call, you became very Bernie-like? As we talked through, at the close of this call, you reached deep down inside and you summoned Bernie Sanders. So maybe there is a path for you to run for office someday.
You know what? I've run for local office, and I live in a very Republican town. Our town has been governed by Republicans 100% for something like 40 years. So I'll have to look elsewhere to run.
I understand how you feel. So again, I lived in South Jersey, and I did try to get involved politically. And whenever I went to a Democratic meeting in New Jersey, I would wear my Bernie stuff. And they would just dismiss me as if I wasn't it was the biggest mistake I could ever make. They were just like, oh, ignore that guy because he's not in the club. So I would tell all Bernie people in New Jersey, don't wear your Bernie stuff to meetings and just go in there and try to infiltrate because that's what they're doing. So you got to play the same game. So I understand what it's like to live in it's so bizarre to live in a county or area in New Jersey or anywhere it's just moderates and Republicans, moderate Democrats and Republicans, and Bernie people or progressives are looked at as like aliens. Like, what? No, you don't belong here. This place is not for you. So I get what you're talking about.
Yeah, and in my town, even a moderate Democrat, has not been elected in a very long time. So
you're gonna have to move and then run for office.
Or run for something higher than a municipal office. I don't know. We'll see. I want to encourage all progressives to get involved with your local party because all politics is local. And especially in New Jersey, becoming your local county committeeman or committeewoman will allow you to have a vote in your county convention, and you will get to choose or be one of the people who choose who gets that line in your county.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let's go back a little bit further then. So you're not co-chair of the Progressive Caucus. What year can you go back to? How far back do we go when you go, you know what? I'm a progressive. I'm not fighting enough. I need to get involved. I'm either feeling guilty or I feel like I have the talent or I have the skill. What clicks inside of you and says, you know what? I need to do something more.
I can tell you exactly what happened. Before 2005, I would say I was a liberal, I was a progressive, but I was not politically active. I would vote probably every 4 years. I'd vote for president because I thought that was important, but who are these other people? I don't know who they are. I'm not going to vote, right? What does it matter? In 2005, our county government proposed a deer hunt in the county parks. And it was clearly a recreational deer hunt. And a lot of local people were upset because either the parks were going to close just for the hunters for a few hours every weekend, or they were going to allow hunting at the same time the parks were open to the public. So it was absurd. You would see the hunting map showing the hunting zone, and crisscrossing that hunting zone was all the nature trails in the park. And I went to meeting after meeting of the Board of Recreation Commissioners, fighting against this hunt. And what I saw was, it's not enough to be right. You have to be politically active. We have to vote these people out of office. And that was what flipped the switch for me. 2005, that stupid county deer hunt was what made me realize I have to get politically active.
That one statement you just said is really probably the best way, again, to end this. We'll see if we do, but it's not enough to be right. You have to be politically active. is what you said. And I
Right.
think that's a major issue with progressives, right? They're so busy being right, but they're not politically active. And I would say, I'm going to ask you one more question. I don't know if we'll have more. One more question is, how do you push through the minutia and the details and the stuff that is so absurd and dry and all the stuff that you have to read? How do you on a day-to-day basis get through all of that? I think most people are going to get in there and go, oh, because I'm in a union, right? I have to read the contract, and I have to know certain issues, and I'm, trying to understand sometimes the legalese. I'm like, I don't even know if I don't even know if I have enough education to understand some of this legalese. How do you push through all of that on a day-to-day basis?
You know what? I'm a lawyer, and a lot of times I feel like that reading a bill, like, oh my gosh, this bill is 10 pages long, 20 pages long, So I think you have to some extent, put your trust in organizations that do have people who are experts on the issue, So if I get an email from Working Families asking me to support a bill, I know it's a good bill. If I get an email from Planned Parenthood telling me you have to oppose this bill, I know it's a bad bill. So you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a lawyer. You have to identify groups and people you trust.
I think you just came up with another idea I have for you, because I don't think it's done enough. And I'm sure I'm going to add more work to your life right now.
Okay.
But wouldn't it be great to journal what's going on and sort of give a roadmap to people who are going to try to do what you're doing, so they can sort of be prepared for the roadblocks and all the minutia and the absurdness and the pushback? I mean, isn't it important to put it down and say, okay, you know what, before you get involved, you're right, and now you want to become politically active, but prepare yourself, because this is what you're going to deal with, and this is how to maybe navigate it, or how to, just wrap your head around becoming politically active.
Yeah, I think it's good to find someone who is active and has been active in your town, so they can tell you, don't talk to this council member, talk to that council member, and they'll be able to guide you, and you can benefit from their experience. You'll know what the roadblocks are. You'll know who's going to be on your side and who isn't, so I think that is very helpful.
And during this time of the pandemic, have you discussed with the Progressive Caucus as far as brainstorming ideas to, again, and I might be repeating myself, but brainstorming again to increase the organization, the member-wise, and the outreach? Or have you been discussing, okay, this is now an issue?
Yeah. We're inviting speakers from a variety of different organizations for our upcoming virtual forums. So, we're hoping to cross-promote there. We're going to ask them to send the event out to their list, and we'll send it out to our list, and hopefully, raise more awareness on both sides.
I would just think the database, though, is so huge. I mean, if you do get lots of people who are considered progressives, how do you outreach? Email? I mean, how is it you just shoot out an email and you hope it gets to 100,000 people, 200,000 people? Or?
So, our email list is handled by the state party. So all of our emails have to be approved by the state party.
Wow.
We also have a Facebook page where we have, a little more freedom. So we create a Facebook event. We send out emails. Our email list is about 4,000 people. And then when we have a speaker, we'll ask them to send it out to their list as well.
It's funny because, again, we're heading towards 2020, and like I said, I'm in a union, and sometimes I'm just like, man, all the stuff they're doing is so archaic. The way things are written and the way the process is, it can be a little bit frustrating. I would think anybody younger coming in, 20s, 30s, they're going to be like, this is not run well. This does not make sense.
Yeah. Like in New Jersey, we have this very archaic law that says in each district, you have one man and one woman as committee people. What if you have two people? What if you have two women? What if you have two men? What if you have a non-binary person? It just doesn't make sense anymore. So some counties are now disregarding that rule and let any two people be the county representatives, the county committee members. for
It's
the
it,
local
and you
body.
know what's so funny is like for hearing this from you, Doris, it does sound like you have to be a lawyer, and you have to have you have to have the patience and the work ethic and the discipline to slog through this. And again, so when you're just talking to someone who's not the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, if you were talking to, you just met me. Hi, Doris. I'm interested in
Hey,
getting involved. This is my
that's
first.
great, Matt.
This is my first meeting, but I don't know what to do, or I don't even know why I'm here. What do you suggest? What should I do?
Okay, I would say contact your Democratic municipal chair. See if there's a Democratic club in your town. See if that county committee slot is open in your district, and if not, they can appoint you to it.
Wow.
Or if the election is coming up, you can run for that slot. And get
When are
involved.
those elections normally take place? What's
They
the
take place the same day as the Democratic primary.
every 4
So,
years or every
every
2
2
years?
years.
Every 2 years.
Yes.
And what am I running for? What should I run for again?
County committee member in New Jersey.
County committee member.
In New Jersey.
I wonder if we have I actually live in, I lied to you, Doris. I actually live in Staten Island. But I have to drive back now. I attended your meeting. Now I'm driving back I'll have to look into it. I wonder, see, that's the thing that fascinates me, Doris, is that, state to state, it possibly would be different, right? If you were
Right.
living in New York, you might be giving me completely different advice.
Right.
So,
right, yeah.
you're going to have to go to this meeting. You're going to have to happen to meet a Doris, and you're going to have to hope to ask her the right questions to really, that's what I'm saying. It seems like there has to be a better roadmap so people understand. I don't know how we build a better roadmap.
Well, you know what? A great way to meet people is just start volunteering. It's sad that Bernie's no longer on the ballot. Otherwise, I would say, go to a phone bank, meet some people, get involved. I'm sure there are going to be, phone banks for Biden coming up, or you could just contact a local progressive group and ask how you can get involved. There's Planned Parenthood chapters, there's other organizations, environmental organizations, civil rights organizations. There's so many groups that are
we normally don't get to ask people to plug their next event, so I'm going to take the opportunity to say, Doris, what is your next forum and how can people watch it?
So our next event will be the Green New Deal Forum, which we're going to have at the end of April to coincide with Earth Day. And sadly, we don't have a date yet because we haven't found a date when all of our speakers are available yet.
How many speakers will there be?
At least 3. So we're, since we haven't found a date yet, we're not sure yet who is available, who will be available.
Can you tell me the names of the 3 speakers that plan to speak about the Green New Deal?
Matt Smith from Food and Water Watch. And oh my goodness, a Rutgers professor whose name escapes me right now. And we're also asking the Sunrise Movement for a speaker.
Doris, thank you so much for coming out and talking to us. Good luck at the co-chair of Progressive Caucus.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for working so hard for Bernie. And most importantly, thank you so much for protecting the animals. It was really great to have you on.
Thank you so much, Matt. It was so nice to meet you and your dog.
Thank you. Good night. This is Real Progress in Action.
Good night.
Signing out. Thanks again, Doris. Good night, everybody.